Cyber Trek. My name is Sarah. This is episode 62. I'm so glad that you are here. You've taken some time to invest in what's happening here in Maine and in my stash and with my projects. Are you well? I hope you are. You're most welcome here, as I said before, and I really do like to highlight on each and every introduction. I very much appreciate all of you who have reached out, commented, provided introductions on the thread, joined groups, follow me on Instagram, etc. It means a lot, and it creates this world that feels accessible and warm and welcoming. There's that word again. And I'm very, very much appreciative of all of those connections. That was a little overkill, was it? I don't know. I think those are important things to say at this time. Right, so welcome. Today I want to talk to you about my works in progress, a few finished items. Well, they're almost finished, but they didn't really qualify as a work in progress, but we'll see. And acquisitions and discoveries. I'm going to announce the giveaway for Lane magazine as donated by the Woolly Thistle. Thank you so much, Claire. I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about place-based yarns and the origination of my thoughts and philosophy on those kind of concepts. I thought it might be good to kind of personally revisit some of those guiding principles that have brought me to this place in my wool story, and why yarns that exemplify landscape or exemplify a particular community are so important to me. And so we'll talk more about that in that particular segment. I'm letting go of Shackleton this week. We've got to be in our open air sea boats by now, right? But I'm planning to revisit Shackleton and where he is on his journey in the next episode. So stay tuned for that. I have been working on my Shackleton project slowly but surely. So let's just jump right in with works in progress, and hopefully there'll be some sort of organic dialogue that flows from there that makes sure to capture everything I didn't say in the beginning. So we'll see what happens. Right, so works in progress. Got my show notes here. You can see that I'm at my parents' in southern Maine. I did get a week up north. See what I said about organic dialogue? I did get a week up north with my husband and dogs in the cabin, and cabin, camp, cottage, whatever your preference for those types of buildings. I was going to podcast up there, but we just found our time outside with the dogs. We did a lot of eating. Just got away from us, and we were enjoying ourselves so much that I never got out the camera. So Ranger Knits will return. He makes a promise, and hopefully we'll be able to grab him next time he's down. I think he'll be down in 2 weeks. So hopefully we can get it back on that 2-week schedule. Time just gets away from me. It's like so fleeting, and I've talked about my relationship with time before on this podcast, and free time, work time, administrative time, all of that. So I'm always working on that relationship. So here's hoping I can be a little bit more organized about my time for the podcast. Where was I going? I think I was going to talk about my works in progress. Right. So I continue to work on the Ramble Shawl by Andrea Mowry, and I'm knitting this out of Upton Yarns 3-ply Coopworth. This is in the Fern's Watch colorway, and I do always like to give a nod to Fern, my Sweet Great Pyrenees, and who this particular yarn was named for. She used to guard the sheep. So Fern's Watch is Twilight, when she'd head out for her duty. And the gray is Silver Birch. So Sarah Lake of Upton Yarns does all natural dyeing, and the gray is actually, it begins as a white base, and she works her magic alchemy. Those are just fun words to say and use and incorporate when we're talking about wool, is it not? So I have gotten almost all of the asymmetrical components of that. This is a garter stripe. For those of you who are listening, I'm going to be trying to be more cognizant of that too. This is an asymmetrically built garter stripe shawl that's going to turn in. And I think it kind of takes a right turn and just becomes a stole, and that stole portion will be a kind of a chevron brioche. So I've got the Ferns Watch is a really beautiful dusky purpley twilight, and then the Silver Birch is just that. It's a real beautiful light silver, aka gray. So I haven't put much time into that of late. It's been sitting idly by my space where I knit here at my parents', but I've been focusing on a couple other things. But it will. I believe it will come along. I think as I get closer and closer to that brioche section, which I know is going to require a little bit of learning, I'm kind of like resisting it a little bit, but it'll get there. Let's see. I'm also working on. Okay, so all right. I don't know why this is hard for me to articulate, and perhaps I should end with this particular project. But anyway, I couldn't resist casting on the Oa sweater by Kate Davies. It came as part of her Isla, Inspirations of Isla club. And it was a really just beautiful, inspiring piece. It's an all-over pattern, kind of a very Scandinavian look, a Scandinavian design, and it has a hood, and then it has these accent colors on the shoulder, the hood line, the cuffs, and the ribbing at the bottom of the body. So if you tuned in last time, I worked with Midwinter Yarns, Estelle, and I picked out a 3-ply Ulcentrum from Sweden to work with. And I thought I had put the labels in here. I wanted to just give you a little insight into Ulcentrum, and one thing that kind of makes it really interesting and special. Right, I had a little camera incident there. So I think I was telling you about, let me get my items together. Put everything down. I was telling you a little bit about Ulcentrum yarn. So Ulcentrum yarn is made from pure Swedish wool collected from farms in the southeast of Sweden by Ulcentrum themselves. The Swedish wool yarn is strong, soft, and easy to weave and knit with. It is also well suited for felting, both by machine and by hand. The wool is washed in a gentle and eco-friendly way so that part of the natural lanolin remains. Oh, it speaks right to my heart, does it not? So I love it. And the inside of their label, you can get all this information on the inside, and it does list ideas and inspiration, the yardage, etc. But it says, tip. For a lovely soft garment, place it in hot water and then squeeze to remove the excess water, or wash it in the machine on the wool program at 40 degrees Celsius and then spin on the highest speed. Which is typically what I do. I just warm water. Sometimes I'll load I have a top loading washer, and I just load it up and push the sweater down and let it soak, squeeze it through a couple times, and then put it on the spin cycle. Anyway, I just wanted to highlight that there is a little bit of the natural lanolin left in this, so it's not a scoured wool. Right, so I have started on the sleeve. I typically knit the sleeves first as my swatch, and I have noted that I do need to go up 1 needle size. And I'm going along swimmingly with the pattern, and I'm using the light natural gray as the main color and the dark charcoal as the contrast color of this color work. And I'm getting to the increase in the sleeves. I'm realizing that this is the first time I've knit a sweater in all over color work. I've done yokes primarily and or just the cuffs, but concepts of increasing, aka increasing in pattern, are not coming intuitively to me in this moment. And in looking at Kate's instructions, and I've read them once or twice, and then I felt a bit boggled by it, and so I kind of put it down. I wasn't really 100% sure how to go about increasing this to make it look cohesive. So I found a blog, and she talks about Scandinavian knitting techniques and increasing in all over color work. And I can give you the name of the blog. It is Fair Isle Knitting Blogspot, Fair Isle and Norwegian Knitting, but it's Fair Isle Knitting Blogspot, Tips and Tricks, Jogless 2-color knitting, increasing in pattern is kind of my target skill or target concept. So I haven't done anything with this since I found this information. So working with Kate's information and working with this particular blog, I'm hoping I can sort out my increases so that they appeal to my somewhat obsessive compulsive need for symmetry. Or not. Perhaps this is a nice little universal lesson for me. I'm not really by nature meticulous. There are things that won't bother me in my knitting, mistakes that won't bother me, but for some reason, ensuring that my color work matches, and also that my color work looks nice when I'm knitting it on the needle. I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's some sort of past life that's emerging in this particular vein of what I'm doing. So anyway, you can see how those two are working up together. I think as I'm looking at it in the screen, that it does have enough contrast so that there is a bit of a pop for that color work. And then instead of, well, in Kate's original pattern, she knits it in like this really beautiful midnight violet as the contrasting color and a light gray silver as the main color. And then she has a red pop. And I've chosen a kind of a cherry red with the light gray and the dark gray. So anyway, that needs some attention. That's the sweater I have on the needles next. I may or may not, I may put another sweater on the needles. I'm feeling very inspired right now with the yarns that I have and a number of the sweater patterns that have come out. And I just am, I don't know, like I said, I'm very inspired to be working with different textures and different traditions. And so I want to satisfy that curiosity and that interest. I'm also working on the Shine Mitts by Pia Kamaborn. I think last time I kept calling her Pia Kamabornia, which Kamabornia is the podcast. Pia is her first name. I believe Kamaborn is the last name of the designer. And these are colorwork mitts, and I was going to enter them. I may still have time. I got to double check. I got to look at my notes. I was going to enter these in the Blacker Pod Knit Along as part of the Edinburgh Yarn Festival, and which, alas, woefully, sadly, I'm not attending this year. But next year, next March, yes, I will be there. And I'm doing it all. Whatever that means, I'm going to do it all. And I'm going to drink really good single malt. And that would be ultimate, like, yarn festival in Edinburgh, single malt whiskeys. In the evening, yarn in the morning, whiskey in the evening. So I finished one of the knits. I'm knitting this out of Blacker's Cornish Tin 2. And the colorways are, I'm having one of those moments with my stuff. I have all my items for the podcast. I'm trying to keep them off the floor because of the dog hair and situation. So we have these little tiny chairs for my niece and nephew when they come here. And they look like little Adirondack chairs if you're familiar with that design. And everything's kind of like overflowing, kind of tucked in at different angles. So it's not the best dog hair system out there. So the colorways I have are Levant Gray, and this one is Wheel Kitty Orange. And they're both, the Wheel Kitty obviously is an overdyed gray. So here's number one. These have really nice Latvian braid details. So they start with that Latvian braid, they go to a colorwork cuff, then another Latvian braid, and then into the design on the front. And almost like, I don't know if this is a lace pattern, but it's an alternating between the two colors. So the thumb is done. I got lots of compliments on the one that I had. So I think I'll still, if I can get this other one finished, I'll definitely get some wear this winter out of them. And potentially even in the summer, it does get chilly enough to get your hands cold. Here's my second one. And for some reason, this definitely is a little bit of a Bermuda Triangle. Like that first one was like bing bing off the needles, and the second one, I don't know why I can't get to that. I feel like I knit and I'm like, God, it's in the same spot, right? The doldrums here. Do you remember that scene in the Gregory Peck Moby Dick when they're in the doldrums in Queequeg. Did you ever see that version? I watched it as a young child. I was slightly scarred for life. My mom was a big fan of old-time movies, and so I saw the gamut of John Wayne and more movies, The Great Escape, Bridge Over the River Kwai. And I loved the Moby Dick film. I mean, I loved whales, and I loved the seafaring history and stuff, but obviously I've internalized some of that angst that the men felt on those whaling ships and the white whale. Anyway, I don't know how I went from knitting to Moby Dick, but amazingly enough, we did. So here's my second. Obviously the thumb's not done, and with any luck, I can start decreasing, like kind of the measurement here is when I get to this section. Taking forever. But I am determined. I am determined to get it. It's like the white whale of my knitting. That's not a very fun analogy, is it? It's kind of sad because the whale was kind of angry. Maybe I could be Ishmael in this situation, right? Call me Ishmael. Right, so, sorry. I told you the yarn, I told you the designer, I showed you the stuff. I'm knitting those on a US 2s, which is one size up from the recommended needles. I always forget to put this back in my bag. Rats. And the other thing I'm knitting, and I'm hoping to give it some love tonight, is I'm knitting Owlette by Kate Davies. This is the child's version of her Owls cardigan, so sweater. So bulky sweater with cables on the yoke that look like owls, and this is the child's version of the pullover. I'm knitting this in Cascade Eco. This is the yarn that the nephew didn't want, so I'm going to give it to my niece. And I finished the body. What I really loved about this particular knitting, and knitting bodies in general, is it's something I can do while I read. I read on my iPad, and I can prop that up at a specific angle, and I can knit and read at the same time. And I can, I don't have to let go of my knitting to change the page. I just swipe it. I don't have to hold it open. So I will say that in my conversion from books to digital, that was a major bonus for me. Ultimately I was a book girl at heart, but when I moved away from bookstores, like being able to just download a book in the evening was really a lifesaver in February in T3 Indian Purchase. So anyway, I am ready to join the sleeves, and so I need to knit those. I'm knitting this on a US 11, which is an 8mm, and I believe I went up in needle size. I'm knitting the 3-4, or perhaps the 2-3. She's 18 months, but she's a rugged gal, and man, do I love her for it. So I went up a considerable amount, just so it can fit her for a little while, because we're moving into spring, of course, so she'll need this potentially in the fall. Hopefully it will still fit. If not, we'll find some other young lovely beastie for it. So, and you can see a majority of my bags are Matterroot trundle bags. Did you see she has a sweater bag? And did you see her new design for trundle bags? So, just gonna have to continue my collection from Matterroot. So that's it for kind of works in progress. I have a few housekeeping things to do for this particular piece, which mostly just involves blocking it and then seaming it. And I'll talk a little bit about finishing. So this is Grizzly by, I need to disappear for just a minute to get my notes. Hopefully there's nothing hideous back there. That's my wood pile for the stove. I moved I keep all the like fire starter there too, which looks like just like a big mass of trash sitting up on the top because it's all paper or whatever, lint from the dryer. So I moved that just so we would have somewhat of a nice put together background. So I'm a little bit digressy today. Just a few notes here. So Blacker's cast off date is March 4th. That's tomorrow. Wah, wah. We'll be making that. But hopefully you did, because maybe you'll get, a prize or something. If you do wear your Blacker knit along piece to Edinburgh Yarn Festival, I believe you get a discount. So double check Louise of Knit British. She's got all the details on what's happening there. Right. And I missed the deadline for the Shine Mitts. Wah, wah, again. So this is Grizzly by the Brown Stitch, which is not in my notes right here. I want to say it's Elizabeth. She's from Maine. She's a Maine designer. I am sorry about that. Perhaps I'll put it in the down bar, and if you're listening, it is simply Grizzly on Ravelry, and it will be uploaded onto my projects page quite soon. It won't be under the word Grizzly, though I do title all of my projects, and so therefore it will not be in alphabetical order, but it'll be noticeable. There's not that many. So the Brown Stitch, Elizabeth Browning, I feel like that's her name, but... So I knit this with my own Icelandic yarn. This was spun by Rustic Fiber Mill, and I believe that this is Little Girl's fleece. It might have even been her lamb's fleece. It's a vest, and I knit it on a US 13. I knit it in the natural gray, and then Sarah of Upton Yarns dyed the top, this beautiful blue, with indigo when she was visiting. We wanted to really see how this particular yarn stood up to the natural dyeing and indigo process. So it's longer in the back than it is in the front. It's knit all in one piece, and it's all in garter stitch except for stockinette sides. So in the pattern, the stockinette sides, you're supposed to pick up stitches all along and then do a 3-needle bind off. And I think I'm just going to mattress stitch them together. I don't really mind seaming straight seams like this. I do not like inserting sleeves. I never get the look that I want. It's a very noticeable line on the body. So obviously, if you follow this podcast for a long time, you've really never seen a set-in sleeve, a stitched set-in sleeve here. So anyway, so I'm just going to mattress stitch those together, and I'm not going to really block this heavily because it is garter stitch, and I did knit it a bit longer than she recommended, as I didn't really want it that short in the front. So where is the front? Let's see if I can put this on. I think this is the front. So anyway, you can see, can you see? Ooh, this is the back. So you can kind of get a feel for the look of that garter on the front. It's very, like I said, kind of medieval tabardy, and I like the kind of chainmail look to it. And this is super yummy and soft up around my face, and I don't know, I just like the way that the whole thing came together. It was, I've been kind of on a shield maiden themed kick for a lot of my clothing, as some of you know who watch my sewing podcast. This seemed kind of to fall in line with that. So, like I said, I did make it a little bit longer, but it was a really fun construction, and it went really fast, obviously, because it was on US 13s. So just simply want to give it a bit of a bloom with some hot water and see if I can get these a bit straighter so it's a little easier to seam that up, and voila skis. It'll go and be ready for the spring weather. I think that's it for some finished items. I did get a bit of spinning done when I was north, and I don't have that example. I had a number of singles that I needed to ply. It's the Flat Island Fleece. I've talked about it before. So I'm creating a 3-ply. I would probably say it's a DK weight, double knitting. And so I got 200 yards of that plied up, and most of the singles that are finished. So now I can finish the singles. I'm just about halfway to a sweater's worth. And I think I can bust that out when I get home. I also got my next fleece, which I don't have down south here, from Flat Island's 2016 clip, which is a little bit of a lighter gray. It has like kind of a rosy gray undertone. It's like a very warm browny gray. And I also got the Shackleton yarn. I don't know why I'm all of a sudden talking about this, but I will talk a little bit about Shackleton yarn later in events and announcements. Righto. Acquisitions and discoveries. So I got some stuff. I've been really excited about Claire of the Woolly Thistle's work and what she's allowing me to access here in the States. And she had Isle Yarns in the shop, which is the Purebeck Dorset flock from the whole family. And last time, I think I hadn't been able to make my decisions fast enough and it sold out. And so Claire was like, well, just wait till the next shipment comes in. So it has arrived and I had gone through the colorways that I wanted and I figured out exactly what I wanted to do. So I got some. You know, it's really hard for me because I have so many plans for so many sweaters and I see the yarn coming in and it's like, it's all right. Claire is running a Plotolopi along for the Rusty cardigan and I so wanted to do it. And I'm like, I gotta order mine. And I was like, it's okay. She will still have that in 3 months. So I get a little bit of that. Like once I know I want to make something and I know what yarn I want to use, I'm just going to put it in the stash because I know I'm going to knit it. So anyway, the Woolly Thistle I've been falling down quite hard in. Let's see. Oh, curses. I thought I had... Let me bring it up for you. So I bought the fingering or the 4-ply weight. And I bought enough for a sweater. And I bought one of their new colorways. This is 100% pure wool from the Isle of Purebeck. This is worsted spun and it's homemade. And I think you're going to have a hard time getting that color. But it's a really beautiful sea blue. It has a little bit of a green undertone to it. It's blue. And I bought, this is Mizzen, worsted spun. And just some statistics on this. This is kind of a light icy blue or bluey gray. This is 100 grams and 350 meters or 380 yards. I'm planning to knit Anne King, well, let me get her name straight for you. I thought I had brought this up, but I did. I'm so good, I didn't even know it. Yep, here it is, Field Study. I'm planning to knit Anne Kingston's Field Study. Curses. No. Isn't that a pretty stunning sweater? So this is an all-over colorwork sweater. It's knit from, it's seamless. And this is knitted from the bottom up in rounds with a steek for the front neck opening. I'm not done that. I've done a steek. The stranded pattern for the sleeve caps is different to that in the body. They are worked at the same time as the body using Barbara Walker's simultaneous set-in sleeve method. The saddle shoulders are also integral using a short road method I devised to create a gentle shoulder slope whilst continuing in the round. So I think that's going to be really exciting. I've knit a saddle shoulder before when I did Skara Bray, which was a very traditional kind of turtleneck, and then you knit the shoulder out and then you knit down from there. And here's the back. So anyway, this should be exciting. This was originally knit in Rowan felted tweed, which is described on Ravelry as a DK. But when you compare the gris of the Rowan felted tweed to this particular yarn, they are similar, and they're both 2-ply. So, and she also makes a note in her pattern that Rowan felted tweed feels more like a heavy fingering than it does the DK. So anyway, I compared yards per pound to get a general feel for that yarn, and if this would be a match in grist. So anyway, so those two are going to be that and Kingston. I had a really hard time picking colors, especially picking colors from their palette. They were just gorgeous, and there was this beautiful, I don't know if it was hay or hay was in the name of the color, but I just couldn't see myself wearing a whole sweater in that. Like, it was a really pretty yellowy green and stunning, and there was another really gemmy like green that looked like emerald overdyed gray is what it looked like. And man, I was just smitten with the colors. So anyway, that was hard, but it's all set, it's ready to go. And that was one of the ones I was like, oh, I really want to get that on the needles. But I'm not really sure I should have 2 all over colorwork patterns on the needles. I think I need kind of like a, reading while you're knitting one, and then one that has a little bit more of that meditative quality. Watching podcasts or what have you. So that's acquisitions for some yarns. I also got a sneak peek, and you may have seen my Instagram post. I'm Fiber Trek on Instagram, to 2 of Wild Lily Artisan Fibers, or Jennifer Goyer, her story-based yarns. So she's releasing a series of yarns that kind of tell a story of land and place and work and community, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, like I said. So these came along. I'm not going to tell you too much about them, but I want you to kind of be aware and be ready. If you don't follow Jennifer already, you can find out more about their particular release and the story that correlates to them on her blog and on her feed. I will just give you a little quick peek. I mean, her tags are so beautiful, and yeah, and they smell really good. So I have a sweater's worth of her yarn Lean In, and I have a sweater already planned for that. And these, I'm wondering about a Rivington cowl with these by Kirsten Kapoor, which I already have one done in Coopworth, but anyway, love them. And as you may have seen in my post, I may have, sometimes they feel like a little bit of a teddy bear, right? So you're feeling a little blue, you're feeling a little down, you're going to sleep, and perhaps you had a bit of a rough day, or a bit of stress. And man, sometimes it's just nice to kind of like just hold these close in. You want to lean into them. Such an appropriate name for a yarn for me. Just lean into it. I also picked up from the Woolly Thistle, and she's really cultivating a nice selection of books and patterns and work that's happening out there, and it's exploded, and it's great, and I love it. I love having access to all these different articles and webazines and magazines and etc. So I picked up By Hand, Making Communities. This is featuring Portland and Midcoast, Maine. Mainly I picked this up for this pattern because I couldn't really wait for it. Jennifer Steingass of Knit Love Wool. She is my soul designer. Like, I love everything she puts out. She did just put out a yoke, and I was like, I can't believe this. She did just put out a yoke in the Isle of Purebeck yarns that's being featured in Woods Making Stories. I think they are on Instagram, and it's kind of an Indiegogo project. But this is why I bought the book. I think it's a really beautiful publication. It features Bristol Ivy. It features Bushaman Preservation Farm. So there, it has a nice smattering of Maine. I, of course, am a resident here, and it's nice to know that Maine is on the map, and it should be. The Maine fiber community is really diverse. It's rich, and with designers and entrepreneurs, but also with producers, and that extends throughout the state, not just Portland and the Midcoast. As a Northwoods girl now, having grown up in southern Maine, having experienced the coast and worked for organizations for the coast, it is like some other states that have to deal with the dichotomy of economy. The coast is very popular for tourism and service and living and restaurants and this and that. And then as you kind of move into western and northern Maine, you lose a bit of that, and it does feel a little, get a little bit less attention. Let's put it that way. So I thought they did a really nice job cataloging what's happening here on the coast, and I know that this was part of a nod to the sister city of Portland, Oregon. So anyway, it's a beautiful publication, and it's got some nice patterns and projects in it, lots of great enriching content. But I just wanted to put a caveat out there that Maine is awesome, and if you're looking at exploring the Maine fiber community, I'd be happy to talk to you about ways to investigate and connect with place throughout the state. So by hand making communities, lookbook number 2, I would definitely throw that into your library. The next one I got, which man, I just swoon every picture, and I mean, I could almost cry right now thinking about this particular journey and the gorgeousness of this book and this, expression of fabric and textile and place. This is how I felt about the Shetland book Kate Davies did. This is In the Footsteps of Sheep by Debbie Zawinski. And Tales of a Journey Through Scotland, Walking, Spinning, and Knitting Socks. And what appealed to me, of course, is Scotland, but also the concept of walking and putting the feet on the ground and, really understanding what shapes a landscape, the weather, the history, the bird life, the ecosystems, the hydrology, all of those pieces that you can experience when you are on the ground there. So, and she does it all. There are knitting patterns in here. There are stories in here. There's gorgeous photography in here. Yes, add this to your library immediately. If you are, anyway, you should just add it to your library. So 2 great publications to look out for. Right. Well, let's do the giveaway. Because that was, I had one other acquisition, and I got this right around Christmas. And it was from a lovely viewer, and it's been living in my stash up at home, but I brought it down here so I could talk about it. This was just a sincere thank you for the podcast from a Hopeful Holler on Instagram. And she sent me something to spin. And I think she just wanted me to step out of my comfort zone for a little while. But, man, I couldn't be happier to do so. But she sent me this beautiful Polworth. This is from the Droll Eclectic, Mansfield, Texas. Taya Schramm, fiber artisan and homesteader. So look at that beautiful purple. So I have some green from Three Waters Farm I picked up at Maryland Sheep and Wool. And I'm thinking if I did this, and then I did the green, I might be able to pull something like some sort of, half garment together out of these 2 working together. So anyway, I know it's not gray. What your people are making me do. So thank you so much, Hopeful Holler, for that. I'm going to take it back to my house up north, and well, maybe not. Maybe I'll have time to spin it. I am working on Eloise as part of the Fleecewise thing, and I'm looking at my wheel right now, and I'm making a mental note to myself to move it to where I sit at my parents' so that I can spin Eloise. Must do that. So thank you so much. And again, I know I've mentioned this before, but I do appreciate all of the pieces that come my way, whether it's through a comment or a gesture of, mail, what have you. Thank you so much. So the Lane giveaway, wow, that was popular. I took entries from the comments on YouTube and the comments on Ravelry. And I just gave everybody a number, and then I random generated the number, and I came up with number 30, and that is Felteria. So thank you so much, Woolly Thistle, for sponsoring this giveaway. Felteria, this is coming to you. And it's funny because when I'm looking at her comment, she says, challenge accepted. I have some beautiful undyed, therefore gray, local Gotland yarn from sheep that are Gotland Shetland crosses. And I've tried making a yoke jumper, and it was okay, but nothing special. So I'm back to looking for patterns for 1,200 meters of DK weight yarn. Any ideas? Well, I'm thinking Surrey. what I just knit. That pattern was originally knit with Gotland, and I think the Shetland might, I have to see what that yarn looks like. But you know, whatever came through genetically, but I don't know. What about Siri by Linnea Ullman? Anyway, I'll get back to you on some other ideas, but anyway, and maybe something from Lane will strike your fancy. So thank you everybody for participating in that giveaway, and thank you again to the Woolly Thistle for sponsoring a copy to send out. So I really was hoping to just take a little opportunity to talk about place-based yarns and where that concept kind of originates for me and what it means to me and why I use it. And I have some essays here I wanted to introduce you to that were very influential in kind of creating a construct for this conversation for me and language for this conversation, and give you a little historical insight, which means telling you a little bit about my childhood. So I grew up on the outskirts of Portland, Maine, in a bedroom community, and in the 80s, development was kind of taking off in the surrounding neighborhoods, or I shouldn't say neighborhoods, the surrounding towns from Portland. Maine's a pretty small state. We only have about 1 million people, and I don't think Portland's over 100,000. It might be at 80,000 city proper for population. So not really a big state. And as a young child, I grew up on the outskirts of a dairy farm and woods. It was like right in the backyard. My best friend was a dairy farmer. Her parents owned a dairy farm, and so I spent a lot of time in the woods, in the fields. And I remember the day that the man showed up in the back field and started driving in stakes with flagging on it. And at that point, I intuitively knew development had come our way, and there would be houses being built in the back. And I had been a staunch, righteous young woman about development and preservation. I was a member of Greenpeace at that time. My parents were really supportive of all of this. And I don't know why I had such strong feelings about land at that point. I don't know where that originated from. But I just, it was my gig. It was my thing. It motivated me to go on a number of trips. I worked for Student Conservation Association. I did Boundary Waters trips. My mom and I drove across the United States visiting national parks. And when I graduated from high school, I was going to Colorado State as a wildlife biologist. I wanted to work with grizzlies and wolves and high predators, high profile predators. And I wanted to work with students, like student conservation work. And I wanted to live in Montana in a cabin, and that's what I was going to do. So a year into my program at Colorado State, I switched gears, realizing that the science piece wasn't driving me as much as the education piece and the interpretation piece. And then I did a study abroad in Scotland. And I ended up on a farm in Orkney, in lambing, and changed the path of my life wholly. So when I returned, I decided I would go into teaching. I came back to the University of Vermont and got involved in Shelburne Farms, and then food really became important. Food and land base and local foods and teaching people about farming, and I stayed on that track for quite a long time. But at the heart of all of that has always been landscape, has always been systems and resources and acknowledgement and awareness of them. So I have been thinking a lot about my dedication and commitment to wool and fiber and yarn. And I love that in this portion of my life, I really can be, I can really work hard in that space to be true to my, woolosophy, my philosophy, how I feel about what's important and what stories I want to tell. I've said this before, there's other aspects of my life where I don't get to do that. I don't feel like I have choice to do that, but in this particular one, I feel like I do, and I really hold that value. That's a huge added value piece to me for this craft. Anyway, I just thought I would share with you some thoughts on place and land and landscape that have really driven my thoughts about place-based yarn and soulful stash, and why that connection between my medium, the fiber, and, you know, and my kind of, I don't know, interest in land is so strong. I don't know if that makes sense. This is a little bit too deep for the podcast. I don't know yet. So I have a couple authors here that were really influential in helping me. Did I already say this? I can't remember. Helping me create a framework and a language to talk about land and landscape and the heart of landscape, not in a technical way, but in kind of a emotional way, a community way. So this is Peter Forbes. This is his book, The Great Remembering, and this was published by the Trust for Public Land. I had the opportunity to hear him speak, and he just moved me to tears. And this book is a really powerful book if you're interested in landscape and conservation and preservation, or just a conversation about people and their connection to land and their land base. And you can see it's full of notes and underlining, and so I thought I would just read to you his opening essay, because I feel like it has it says a lot about what it says what I want to say, and I just am not in a particular place to articulate that. So let me see. I'm trying to debate whether to read the whole thing, or I'm going to just kind of paraphrase. He is in a national forest, and he's talking about Aldo Leopold, and he's describing the space. And he says, as I sit in this mountain pasture, I recognize that land itself has come to mean many different things to me. In the course of writing this essay, I had grown comfortable using the word land to mean soil, trees, nature, plants, and animals, even vacant lots. But also as a metaphor for something much larger. Land had come to mean, to me, both an object and a process. A process because the point of this essay is to change the way people look at land and their connection to it. Your definition of land, therefore, is as good as mine. In simplest terms, land is where gravity brings us. Land is where our feet, but also our souls and our dreams make contact with the rest of the living world. It is where we feel, taste, breathe in, and smell the more than human world. Land is food, ecosystem, and community. Land is life. Leopold wrote, land, then, is not merely soil. It is the fountain of energy flowing through a circuit of soils, plants, and animals. Land, then, is communion. When I speak of land, I mean something closer to a fountain of energy than any of its individual elements. Land is the sweep of one's heart and the place where we play out our greatest struggle. Like the ancient ponderosa snag that stands before me against the bright blue morning sky, land is slow, ever-changing, and majestic in birth and death. Land is the frothy torrent of milky water that will fill a slot canyon in moments, and it's the green edge of a pond where the water quietly meets the lush marsh grass. So he has a couple other things. They're questions that he asks about conservation projects. I just took my marker out. And they have been relevant to me and some other work that I've done, but I felt like they were interesting to think about applying to Soulful Stash and Place-Based Yarns. So let me see if I can, are they coming to land, or are they in this one? They're coming to land. They're here. So he's talking about conservation projects for land, but they're just, like I said, they're just interesting in bringing up some ideas. One is, what do we hope to learn from our own relationship to this place? So for me, you know, you buy El Centrum, you buy Croft 29, you buy Nash Island, you buy whatever, that's something that really exudes a sense of place and a sense of work. What can we learn from that? And how amazing it is that we can learn and connect through that space with landscape and with people. What are the stories from this place that we want to bring to our community? I think, and I've said this before, you know, this is a real opportunity to help tell stories. People that are doing things, or, you know, landscapes that you find important, or a way of life, or what have you. This is a way to participate in that. And again, I think that's a really special relationship we get to have through our craft. And what does this place teach us? You know, what does this yarn teach me? You know, North Ronaldsay sheep eating seaweed. Wow, let's talk about that. Let's go further. Let's talk about, you know, iodine copper systems. Let's talk about small island communities. Let's talk about 3-ply versus 2-ply versus singles. Let's talk about Kemp. Let's talk about Vikings. So all of those things can really instigate more exploratory work in other ways in other disciplines, and I love that. So those are just a couple questions that I felt like were really applicable to place-based and soulful kind of conversations. Anyway, am I rambling? I think I might be. So I gave you Peter Forbes's kind of inspirational talk about land, and the only other one I wanted to give to you was this this quick essay from Kathleen Dean Moore. I had been away for many days, sitting behind glass walls in one airport waiting room after another, cold and fidgety in a black plastic chair, uneasy under the grim eyes of security guards. With all the other lonely, tired, anxious people, I stood in line with my identification in my hand. Then we were grinding through clouds 35,000 feet above the earth. The noise was overwhelming, and so was the silence of strangers crowded side by side, wincing when their elbows touched. I was startled when the flight attendant announced we would be landing. What did she say? I asked the man next to me. We'll be landing soon. That's what she said. Seat back in an upright position, tray table locked, I seized on those words. Land is a noun, a solid, a place you come home to. Land is a set of relationships, ecosystems, hydrological cycles, ocean currents, neighborhoods and nitrogen cycles, and the energy that flows among them. But land is also a verb, an action that people sometimes take. To land is to come into contact again, finally, blessedly, with the actual earth, a place that welcomes you, nourishes you, protects you, lifts you with relief. Suddenly, I wanted to land more than anything else in the world. So we can use concepts of land as a verb, and wow, we can land in the Isle of Purbeck, we can land in Scotland, we can land on an island in Nash Island, we can lean in. I think all of those concepts really start to create, a feeling, and they're very evocative, and I think they can be comforting and inspiring, and I just feel really blessed that yarn can do that for me. That's just at my fingertips, and I just wanted to share some of those thoughts with you. I don't necessarily, I'm not trying to persuade you one way or the other or what have you. I just wanted to provide a little bit of insight into what that means, what meaning that holds. I just really need to talk about events, and I wanted to just give you a quick insight into 2 retreats I'm running. One is the Bold Coast Retreat, and that is in July, and it's the 3rd week in July. There's 2 sessions. There's more information about that in my Ravelry group, but if you're interested, you're welcome to email me at fibertrek@gmail.com for details. I might be able to put some details in the show notes as well. So look at the blog, fibertrek.wordpress.com. And you can also find information on the blog about my Highlands on the Fly retreat, which happens in October. It'll be the last weekend in October this year, and that happens at New England Outdoor Center, just a couple miles up the road, and T2R9. It's right on a lake. It's on Millinocket Lake, overlooking Katahdin, and really good food, great marketplace. It's a pretty low-key event, but certainly, there's lots to do and see and knit and etc. So I hope to see you there. I think that's it. I think I'm ready for a fond farewell. I've had a lot of glitches here. I don't know how this is all going to knit together. So I am going to say farewell. I'm looking at all my things. I think I've covered it all. This is a bit of a long one, but if you've stuck around, wishing you the best. Wherever your fiber treks may take you, may you return home safe.